Hi y'all, Biohack here. What if I told you there is a team that can do a 1-key on Nightmare Hydra using only one legendary champion? What if I told you that the 5 epics that accompany this legendary are all champions that are either login champions or have been part of previous guaranteed events? What if I told you that this team was missing crazy buffs like increased defense and increased speed? What if I told you it was missing crazy debuffs like Hex or even decreased defense? Do you think something like that could actually exist? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you one of the teams that I use in Hydra that is actually capable of doing a 1-key, meeting all of these different criteria. So if that's something you're interested in, please stick around for the rest of this video. But before we do that, I want to do a couple of bookkeeping notes. One, I'm on a sponsorship for Raid right now. So if you're a new player interested in checking out the game, I will have a link down in the description. And if you use that link to download it, it will help me out a lot. I would appreciate it. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Scroll down, click that button right now. I would love it. We're doing a lot more Raid content recently and trying to, pick it up. This is a new this is my second channel, and building it up is a bit of a challenge, but yeah, I would love that. Also, I do stream Raid about 5 days a week over on my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/biohacktv. Don't be afraid if you see me in the Black Desert Online category. That's my main game, but we usually do dual streams between both games, so feel free to come over and talk about Raid and do all that kind of stuff, and I'd be happy to do it. But without that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the team, and let me show you the champions. Okay, first things first, let's talk about the champions that are involved in this team. There's really 3 champions that make up the core of the team that are there for every different Hydra rotation, and then there's 3 other support champions, which I change out depending on exactly how we're doing this. This team is not the team I usually run in Nightmare. This is usually my Brutal team, and so it's pretty good at Brutal. But because specifically the Head of Torment is in the starting rotation, we're able to kind of cheese it a little bit and actually get it done on Nightmare as well. So first things first, what are the 3 core champions? Well, I said there was one legendary, and the first legendary is Vizier Ovelis. Vizier is going to bring a couple of things to this team. The main thing we need him for, the biggest thing, is this ability to extend the duration of all debuffs for 1 turn on a 3-hitter on his A1. So he's going to allow us to keep up debuff duration. And one of the epics, as you can probably guess, is going to be Geomancer. So big part of the way this comp is going to work is we're going to put Geomancer's HP burn up, and Vizier is going to extend it. That's not the only thing that Vizier is going to bring to the team, though. He also brings this A2, which brings the ability to put block buffs and decrease attack, which are super important debuffs to bring into the team. In particular, this is not an AoE attack. It's a single target attack, but it's really mostly important that we have this on the Head of Wrath. The rest of the heads don't really matter that much for this comp. So we're mostly just, we use this A2 to get it on the Head of Wrath, and then it will be extended with his A1. He also brings the ability to do a debuff spread, which is kind of nice, because it'll allow us to spread these buffs to other heads once we get their duration up and running. One important note about this is I mentioned that Geomancer is going to be part of this team. You cannot use this debuff spread on any head that has an HP burn placed by Geomancer on it, because when you spread that HP burn, it counts as a different buff. It doesn't count as being placed by Geomancer, and so his passive will not work. So we'll talk about Geomancer's kit in a minute. Actually, we can go talk about that right now. But it's important to keep in mind that you can't spread Geomancer's buff. We're not doing that. A lot of people think, oh, you bring Geomancer in, you put his HP burn up, and then you spread it. Nope, doesn't work. We're not using Vizier to spread Geomancer's HP burn, but we are using him to extend the HP burn. His debuff spread also brings a couple other nice things to his kit, not for this comp in particular, because we're going to be countering the Head of Torment in other ways, but he does bring a perfect veil when he spreads debuffs, which can be nice in certain compositions to help avoid issues with the Head of Torment. And then, yeah, he starts it with Perfect Veil as well. So that's the main thing that Vizier is going to do. He's going to extend our buffs, and he's going to bring block buffs and decrease attack. Okay, so then Geomancer is the next champion that we've already alluded to a lot. And I imagine most of you are familiar with his kit, but just in case you're not, we can basically ignore his A1. It's just an AoE that pushes decreased accuracy. His A2 can be kind of nice to steal buffs if that becomes an issue, but mostly we don't need to worry about this either. It's really a combination of his passive and his A3 that's important. His A3 puts an HP burn and a weaken on the enemies, which is very, very nice. And the reason this HP burn is so important is because of his passive, which whenever well, first off, any head that has the HP burn placed by Geomancer is going to deal 15% less damage to your allies, so nice for survivability. And then whenever this champion or any of the team are attacked, he will do a reflect on the head, reflecting the damage that your teammates took, and it will also have a chance of proccing this additional 3% damage to the target's max HP. This makes him an amazing damage dealer for bosses. So that's two parts of the core, right? We place the HP burn with Geomancer. This is a single target HP burn on a 3-turn cooldown with a 3-turn duration. But thanks to Vizier extending, not spreading, but extending the A1, we can keep it up on the head once it's been placed, and then we can place it on all the heads and keep it up permanently. Now, keeping it up permanently would still be pretty hard with just Vizier, which is why we bring in another champion, and that champion is going to be my man Jizoh here. I know MTG Jedi was throwing shade on Jizoh in his Lizardman video the other day, but this champion is amazing for Hydra and particularly this role. So what is he bringing to the team? His A1 doesn't really matter. It's just a 2-hitter that does a little bit of damage, but we're not dealing damage with him. We don't care. His A2 is really important. So what it does is it places a shield buff for 3 turns and a counterattack buff for 2 turns on one ally. It also grants him an extra turn. So even though this is a 5-turn cooldown, it operates more like a 4-turn cooldown. This is really, really important. In particular, this counterattack buff. So the logic behind this team is going to be Geomancer places the HP burn. We put counterattack on Vizier with Jizoh, and then every time Vizier gets hit, he will counterattack using the A1, extending the HP burn of Geomancer on those heads. And this is how, by using these 3 champions, we can keep HP burn up on every head at the same time, just by placing them one at a time with Geomancer and then extending them through counterattacks and Vizier's A1. So the builds for this champion become important because one of the other mechanics of Hydra is that the Mischief Head will always target the enemy with the most buffs, or its enemy, your ally, your teammate with the most buffs. And so by using Jizoh to give a counterattack buff to Vizier specifically, we can force the Head of Mischief to want to target Vizier. So then what we do is we build Vizier with high accuracy. Oops, we're not on Vizier. With high accuracy and high resist. And these stats are more like brutal stats, not nightmare stats. But actually, I guess he's okay. But yeah, we build him with high accuracy and high resist and relatively slow speed. So here's his speed right here. Or here's his stats. He's got relatively low speed. Jizoh is running at like 260. We'll show his stats in a second. And this lets us keep the counterattack buff up a lot. And so he'll become the Mischief Tank, and then anytime the Mischief Tank hits him or any of the AoE heads hit him, he'll counterattack, extend that buff, right? And then Jizoh brings one more thing to the table, which is crucial to this fight, and that is his A3. That is a 4-turn cooldown provoke with a 2-turn duration. Furthermore, because his A2 grants him an extra turn, this is operating almost more like a 3-turn with a 2-turn than a 4-turn. This lets us keep up provoke on the Head of Decay with 100% consistency. And that is really, really important because if the Head of Decay gets a turn and cleanses off your team, he will remove all the HP burns that Geomancer has placed, which is going to be a wipe. So that's the core that makes up this team. Right? We have Jizoh placing counterattack and giving us provoke to keep that Head of Decay locked down. We have Geomancer bringing in all our damage, and we have Vizier extending Geomancer's HP burns and keeping up block buffs and decrease attack on the Head of Wrath. Okay, so that's the core team. One of the major limitations of this team that I want to address right now is we don't have basically any damage outside of Geomancer. This means that if Geomancer gets eaten by the head, especially on Nightmare. On Brutal, I can sometimes break him out, but on Nightmare, he's probably not going to get broken out. So it's probably going to brick your run if Geomancer gets eaten. Another downside of this team is that it's very, very manual. So I'm not trying to argue that this is the best team in the world. Not even close. There's a lot of downsides to this team, but what it is very accessible. You can probably make this team, as long as you have Vizier and you've done those guaranteed events in the past, or you've pulled those epics, you can make this core team work. And even if you don't do it on Nightmare, doing it on Brutal is very consistent. It almost always works on Brutal, unless I just get bad RNG and Geo gets eaten pretty early. Sometimes you can try and let him die too, so he doesn't actually get eaten, but anyway, that's beside the point. So that's the core of the team, and that's its main limitation. How we get the rest of this to work depends on the specific rotation that you run. So there's a few different champions I often use for this. Sometimes I use a speed booster to actually make Jizoh move fast enough to keep this up. In this comp, we're not going to do that, but options like that could be even like something like High Katoon. You kind of want to bring some healing, you want to bring revive, and you want to bring some way to counter the head of torment. So often I'll use a Rector Drath and other things. But the main champions that we're going to use, the 3 supports that we're going to use, again, these are optional for this particular rotation, are going to be, first we're going to bring in White Driad Nia. Well, okay, first we're going to bring in Inquisitor Shamael. We're going to bring in Inquisitor Shamael and White Driad Nia. White Driad Nia is going to be our lead champion. Shamael, if you're unaware, has this passive where he, every time an ally receives a fear debuff, he will remove it instantly and boost that ally's turn meter by 15%. It says ally, but it doesn't actually mean ally. It always boosts the leader. So whatever champion is in the first slot in your team will get that boost, which essentially allows the Head of Torment, which puts this fear buff every time, or debuff every time you hit him, on your team. Shamael will cleanse it off and give you a speed boost. So it makes the Head of Torment act like a massive, massive turn meter battery for this team. Furthermore, because Geo is so targeted in who he's dealing damage to, unlike something like an AoE max HP nuker, we can leave the Head of Torment up and never put this HP burn on unless we actually absolutely have to in order to break a champion out, and keep it up and just let it serve as a turn meter boost over and over and over again, right? So that's what Shamael's doing. His build, I have him built as a mischief tank. You might prefer, because I use him in other comps, you might prefer to have him built as a damage dealer to help in that situation where Geomancer gets eaten. Maybe Shamael could actually bust him out if he's built for damage, but mine is not. He's mostly just built to have survivability. I mean, all he really needs to do is survive. That's it. That's it in this team. He's just surviving. He's not even being our mischief tank in this team because we're having Vizier do that instead. So yeah, his build doesn't really matter that much. He just needs to not die. Okay, so then the next champion we talked about is White Driad Nia. This is going to be the first champion in our team. She doesn't bring an aura, which is unfortunate because she is going to be the leader. But the reason we want her to be the leader is because she is going to bring a couple of things to the team. One, she has this AoE A1, which places a decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. It only has a 50% chance to land, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter because as soon as it lands once, Vizier is going to be able to extend it, just like he extends the HP burn from Geomancer. The other thing Nia is bringing to the team is this A2, which serves as a cleanse and large heal for a specific teammate, and it also decreases the cooldown of that target's skills. This is going to be really important. We're going to use this first on Geomancer to get HP burn up on all the enemy heads, and then we're frequently going to be using it on Jizoh to make sure that he always has his provoke ability up to use on the Head of Decay so that it doesn't cleanse the rest of the team. Honestly, these are really only the 2 abilities I mostly use for Hydra because I have my Nia built in a specific way, which we'll talk about in a second. The other thing she brings to the team is an ally protection and strengthen on all allies. This is pretty good to keep your other allies alive, but it does mean that she might die if she's not built like super tanky. Part of what makes Nia so good as well, though, is her passive here. Whenever this champion is healed, heals each ally except this champion by 20% of that heal. So in this particular build, I have her set up in a lifesteal set with a little bit of damage. She's got 100% crit rate, but her crit damage isn't that good. She's a defense-based champion, if we look at that. So she is getting her damage up from defense. We have her built with reasonably high defense. She doesn't have a ton of HP, but she's got reasonably high defense, and she has enough accuracy to make sure she's landing these decreased speed. I have her, again, in a lifesteal build so that when she procs that A1 and uses the Giant Slayer Mastery, she will get a large amount of healing. I've messed around with her both in regen and in lifesteal. I think regen is better for Nightmare and lifesteal is better for Brutal, because on Nightmare it's hard to get her to do enough damage to really get that healing up. But either one works. You'll see in this build I'm using her in Nightmare with the lifesteal build. The other thing is it's nice to be able to use all your lifesteal gear that you get and save your regen gear for champions that need it somewhere else, because I think she's like the only champion I actually build in lifesteal gear. But yeah, that's how she's built. And again, it's just in terms of masteries, it's just important to make sure you get War Master, or did I say Giant Slayer earlier? Get War Master, because you know she has that AoE A1, so she's gonna be hitting a lot. Other things, I have her with Master Hexer. It doesn't really matter with Vizier, but I mean, what else are you gonna pick? I guess we could maybe even take Sniper instead, but whatever, it doesn't matter. And then we have Lasting Gifts as well. I don't use her buffs that much, but that's how she's built. Cool. Okay, so that's 5 champions. The last one on the team is a Reviver stroke healer. So in a different rotation, I might use Rector Drath. In this rotation, I went ahead and used Godseeker Aniri because she's one of the champions I have that actually does that job fairly well. And again, she's just here to provide healing. Her buff extension is kind of useless in this. I shouldn't say useless. It helps with Vizier a little bit, but it's not great because we're hardly bringing any buffs to the actual team for her to extend. But she does bring these revives and these reset cooldowns when she does the revive. She has the passive revive, and she has a decent bit of healing. I also have her in a Miracle Heal Blessing to help restore some of the max HP that's getting destroyed. So again, she was another champion that's available in a guaranteed event, but we just need someone who can revive and someone who can heal, and she does that job. Okay, so that is the core of the team. Her build doesn't really matter. It's just regen. She's built tanky with high speed and a lot of stats. This is because I was using her for my like duo Sand Devil team and stuff like that. Whoops. And yeah, I think that is mostly it. So that's the core of the team. We have Vizier. Again, Vizier is built high accuracy, high resistance to be our mischief tank, and to place all of his debuffs. We have Jizoh built fast in Relentless gear so that he's getting those cooldowns as much as possible so he can keep up his counterattack on Vizier and his provoke on the Head of Decay. We have Geomancer's build. Honestly, Geomancer's not built that well for this content in particular. He's just built with a lot of survivability, and he has way more accuracy than he needs because I use him in Iron Twins, and that's what he's here for. And he's built really slow. You could probably build him a little bit differently, but honestly, for this particular comp, it doesn't really matter. Like, he just needs to get HP burn up once and then just sit there and not die. And that's it. So yeah, that's basically the core of it. So I actually did this run last night, and I recorded the intro, so I'm going to go to Biohack of the Past and actually show you that run at this point. But I hope you like this video. And again, click the subscribe button if you like this kind of content, and enjoy the rest of the actual Hydra run. All right, so I'm going to show you how this team works. And first things first, the team order is actually pretty important because for this particular comp, because I'm running with Inquisitor Shamael. In the other comps where we're not using the Shamael to boost the turn meter of the lead champion, you'd probably want to put Geomancer in the lead for his HP aura. But in this version, for this rotation, I'm going to actually put White Driad Nia in the lead. This is because her frequent turn meter boosting, thanks to Shamael and Torment, is going to mean that she gets a lot of healing, and she also is going to get the ability to reset her A2 very frequently, which is going to let her decrease the cooldown on things like Geomancer and Jizoh, so that we can make sure we're maintaining all of the uptime on the different abilities that we need to maintain. After White Driad Nia, I like to put Godseeker or whatever your reviver is in the second position, because I don't need any of these guys for damage. Like I don't really have any direct damage dealers, which is a main limitation of this comp, but you know, that's just how it is. So if White Driad Nia is not in the lead, it's either because she's dead or she's been devoured. If she's dead, I want to boost the turn meter of Godseeker so that we can revive her. And if she's devoured, well, Godseeker's still nice to get the healing out there and things like that. So that's why she's there. It doesn't really matter after that. Jizoh's next, just because, you know, we want to maintain his provoke, but whatever. If both of these two are gone, then something's going seriously wrong. Cool. So that's how we set up the turn order. I'm going to go ahead and start the fight. We have no aura, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but, you know, so be it. That's how it works with these Shamael cheese comps. Okay, so we're going to enter the fight, and the first and most important thing we need to do is, well, first off, we don't need to do any turn meter boosting. Actually, you know what? I am going to do turn meter boosting. Why not? So we're going to hit Torment to boost the turn meter of Nia, and the reason I'm doing that is because I want to land decreased speed, which, wow, she landed on everyone very first try. Okay, so Jizoh's next in the turn order, and we need to land his provoke on the Head of Decay. So good. He should have plenty of accuracy to do this, but there's always like a 3% resist chance. Okay, next one in the turn order is Vizier, and Vizier is going to come in and place his decrease attack and his block buffs on the Head of Wrath. This is super, super important because Wrath is going to use this ability on his first turn, and he's going to, he would normally give himself increased attack, so we need to get that up ASAP on Wrath and the decreased attack. Now it's Geomancer's turn, and then you basically want to prioritize the heads in terms of which one is most important to take down. I like to always target Decay, because there's always that chance that he can resist the provoke or something annoying can happen and he'll cleanse everything off, and so he's just the worst head. Want to get rid of him as quickly as possible. After Decay, if it's this team where Shamael's in the team, then we don't really want to put it on Torment. If it was like the other, if it was a different comp with and Torment like popped up in the middle of the fight, I'd want to target him next, because I wouldn't be getting the turn meter boost because I wouldn't have Shamael, and I'd have like Rector Drath instead. But still, it's just nice if we don't have to worry about that. So he would be the next one if it wasn't in a Shamael comp. Since it isn't a Shamael comp, we would then move on to the head of, what is it, Suffering, I think, is the next priority. And basically the two heads, the other two like DPS style heads, the lowest target priority head is going to be actually Head of Wrath. Assuming we're not going to put it on Torment at all, it's going to be Head of Wrath, because Head of Wrath is actually like almost a benefit in this team because we're keeping all these debuffs on him. Vizier is neutralizing him really well, and his constant activation of his skill can actually be helpful to pump out a lot of damage. So I don't like to target Head of Wrath if I don't have to. In this comp or in this lineup, I will, because I want to get at least 3 heads burning. So we'll go ahead and do that. Plus, I'm doing it on Nightmare. Usually I use this team on Brutal, not Nightmare. I have a different team I use on Nightmare. But just for the showcase, we're using it on Nightmare, and he does hit harder on Nightmare, so I'm going to focus him down. And then the last one is this Head of Mischief. The problem with the Head of Mischief is we don't have a way to directly target him, which means we can't extend that HP burn up very well. So I like to put it on him last, and then every time it comes back up, once we have it on all the other heads, we can just pop it back up on with Geomancer whenever it you know, falls off. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and drop it over here on Head of Mischief, or sorry, Head of, what is it, Suffering. And then from here, White Driad Nia is gonna reset the cooldown on our Geomancer, and we're just gonna chug away. So this fight's probably gonna take a while. It can take actually a long while. Sometimes it can take like 40 minutes to beat it. But you know, that's just how it goes. We're just gonna keep running this and hoping that our Geomancer doesn't get devoured. If he gets devoured, then the run will end, which is the, you know, one of the big main limitations of this. But other than that, like, things are going pretty well. Here we have to make a decision about what to do with Vizier in terms of buff extension. I'm going to go and try and extend the buffs on the Head of Wrath because it's getting very low. There was only 1 turn left, and we got an extra, like, I think Master Hexer procced on Geomancer, I think, which is why that's a 4 turn. So we're safe on this. The other heads will mostly extend their own buffs with Vizier because of the counterattack that we're about to place right here. But Head of Mischief... Well, yeah, Head of Mischief will target Vizier because of the provoke or the turn meter boost, or not turn meter boost, the counterattack buff. But Head of, what is this guy's name? Whatever. Anyway, he's gonna target. He's not gonna AOE. So okay, so here's another important thing that we did. We did a debuff spread on the Head of Wrath. It's very, very important that we do not do a debuff spread on any head that has an HP burn from Geo, because HP burns spread by Geo will not... if he spreads it, then it won't get the Geo effect, the effect of Geo. So we don't want to ever spread those buffs. So, like, that can brick your run if you do that. I think when a lot of people see this comp, they think, oh, like, oh yeah, you put it on with Geo and you spread with Vizier. No, doesn't work. Doesn't work. Don't do that. Okay, so we used Geo's A2 over on the Head of Wrath last turn, so we're going to reset the cooldown on this. I'm confident we have 2-turn provoke on... what are these guys? Head of Decay, yeah. We have a 2-turn provoke on Head of Decay, so I think we're doing fine in terms of Geo, so that's great. So we're going to, again, just focus this here. You can see Nia's getting pretty low, but she's built in that lifesteal set. She's going to be able to come in and just whack her HP all the way back up. In this position, we're doing pretty well on all of our debuffs. So I'm going to go ahead and target the Head of Decay. Again, the Head of Decay... oh, I kind of forgot I didn't have Brimstone on anybody. We don't really want it on Decay because he won't be able to use any of his active abilities. Anyway, that's fine. Okay, so we're going in again with Nia. We've got a reset. Now we're dropping it on Head of Mischief. And look, we've got, by turn 10, we have Geo's HP burn on all of the heads that we're going to put it on. Again, we're not going to put it on Torment because we don't want the Torment to die. We want to use it as a turn meter battery, basically, for this whole fight. So yeah, we're just going to keep coming in with Nia. And now we're mostly going to be focusing on resetting Jizoh's provoke with the Nia cooldown reduction, or just healing whoever needs healing. But we're pretty much off to the races at this point. So... we're doing all right on HP, so I am going to reset this, and I'm going to go for the Head of Mischief, but it gets redirected. Yeah, so that's where we're at. Yeah, I'll probably just go and put it on like a fast-forwarded version of this right now, and we'll play out the rest of this fight. I might have to end this fight if... Geomancer gets devoured, because it'll be really hard to break him out since we won't be getting the effect of any of his heads. But yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty much off to the races at this point, and hopefully you enjoy the fights, and I'll come back to you at the end. All right, well, there you go. We barely made it. I was super sketched out about this. Like I said, normally this is my brutal Hydra team and not my Nightmare Hydra team. This is my first time actually doing it in Nightmare, and we barely made it, but we did. 1 key Nightmare Hydra with 5 epic champions. So yeah, pretty cool. I really like this team. I think it's really fun. I think it's really nifty just because it's so weird and outside of what the normal meta is. I'll still probably keep using it or some variation of it in my Brutal team. I probably won't run it on Nightmare just because I have a better team for Nightmare. But yeah, can't complain. Nightmare Hydra, there you go. So yeah, I hope you guys like this comp. I hope you found it was pretty interesting. You can see that, I guess I didn't go over the damage. Oh, let me hide my webcam so you can see. There we go. So you can see the damage here. Geomancer did almost all of it. He did 30 million. Of course, this is because he's doing the reflect. Vizier brought in a little under 2 mil, and Nia brought in a little under 3 mil. You can see Nia did about 2.5 million worth of healing, and Godseeker did also about 2.5 million worth of healing, and no one else really made a significant debt. Yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting comp. I think it's pretty fun. There's a lot of different variations you can do based on the different rotations, but all in all, yeah, it works. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.